The monk gathered alms to feed the boy. After gathering enough rice and vegetables, the monk returned to the boy, who looked up with wide, tear-stained eyes. The monk gently placed the food in front of him, and the boy, with a shaky hand, began to eat. The monk watched the boy with a mixture of compassion and awe. As the boy devoured the food, his hunger seemed to fade, and with it, the sadness that had drawn tears down his face. In that moment, the monk felt a pang of realization wash over him, an understanding that went beyond the mere act of feeding someone in need. After the boy finished eating, he looked up at the monk, his eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Thank you, sir. You have made my day brighter," the boy said, his voice full of innocence and joy. The monk nodded, but he felt an unsettling sensation within him. "I came down from the mountains to find enlightenment, yet here I am, attached to this moment of kindness," he thought. The monk spent that night in the village, unable to sleep. He lay awake, reflecting on the encounter with the boy. The hunger he had witnessed now resonated within his own heart. The world was not solely about seeking enlightenment. It was also about connecting with others, understanding their struggles, and sharing kindness. The next morning, still deep in thought, he decided to stay in the village a little longer. He began to help the villagers, repairing their homes, teaching their children, and tending to their gardens. With each smile he received, he felt something shift within him. The desire for enlightenment that had once consumed him began to transform. He no longer sought an abstract awakening. Instead, he found more profound happiness in small acts of service and compassion. Weeks turned into months, and the monk had become an integral part of the village. He learned about their lives, their dreams, and their challenges. When a fierce storm struck, destroying crops and threatening to leave the villagers in despair, the monk rallied the community. He organized efforts to replant damaged fields, encouraged cooperation, and provided comfort to those who needed it. Through the months of shared toil and laughter, the boy, who was now a handsome young lad, often came to help him. Their bond deepened, full of lessons and laughter. The monk would tell him stories of the mountains, of meditation, and of the world beyond the village. In turn, the boy would share his youthful dreams, often of adventure and freedom. One evening, sitting by a flame under the stars, the young boy turned to the monk and said, "You know, when you first came to the village, I thought you were just a wandering monk, but you've become more than that. You're like a light to us. Why did you come down from your mountains?" The monk paused, pondering the question. "I came seeking enlightenment, but I found something even greater. I discovered that enlightenment blooms in connection, compassion, and service to others. I learned that the heart needs nourishment just as much as the body. And in caring for others, I have found that enlightenment exists in the world around me, not only in solitude." The boy listened intently, a spark of understanding lighting up in his eyes. So, enlightenment is not just about being wise or knowing everything. It is also about how we treat each other. The monk smiled, impressed by the boy's insight. "Precisely. Our wisdom is reflected in our actions and relationships. Kindness is a form of enlightenment. To lift others not only brightens their paths, but illuminates our own." Years passed, and the villagers celebrated their ties to one another, rooted in the compassion and understanding shared among them. The monk became known as the heart of the village, a role he cherished above all else. One day, a pilgrim arrived, seeking knowledge and truth in the mountains, just as the monk had years before. He approached the monk and humbly asked for guidance on the path to enlightenment. The monk listened, reflecting on the questions he once had. "You seek knowledge, but the journey requires more than simple answers. What will you do with the knowledge you gain? Will you share it? Will you practice compassion?" The pilgrim frowned. "Isn't truth enough? Shouldn't I strive for an understanding above all?" With a gentle but firm demeanor, the monk replied, "I once thought the same way. But it is in our practice of love and kindness that we learn the most profound truths. The heart that opens to others invites wisdom. So, if you truly seek to find enlightenment, be willing to serve, to listen, and to connect." The pilgrim nodded thoughtfully, realizing that perhaps his journey would not simply be one of solitude and meditation amidst the mountains, but a journey of connection, a weaving together of souls through compassion. As the monk embraced his presence, he felt the echoes of his earlier days resonating in his heart. He was filled with gratitude, not for the enlightenment he had sought, but for the love he had discovered in the mutual giving and receiving that formed the fabric of village life. Eventually, the monk returned to the mountains, not as someone who had renounced the world, but as a wise soul who embraced both realms, the solitude of personal growth and the joyful chaos of community living. He climbed higher, not to isolate himself, but to meditate on the lessons learned, the laughter shared, and the connections made. On one of those mountaintops, he reached a tranquil clearing with a perfect view of the village below. He sat there for hours in deep contemplation. He had experienced the depth of connection that enriched his spirit, the nobleness of giving, and the sweetness of shared laughter. Enlightenment, he realized, was not a destination. It was the path he had walked with others, filled with moments of profound beauty and shared struggle. As he contemplated this realization, a gentle breeze flowed through the trees around him, and he felt a clarity he had never known before. The winds of change embraced him, whispering the wisdom he had gleaned throughout his journey. In that sacred moment, he understood that wisdom and enlightenment are not merely abstract concepts to be attained. They are the experiences we cultivate in our hearts and the connections we nurture in our lives. And so, if you find yourself seeking enlightenment or self-improvement, remember the monk's journey. Recognize that wisdom comes not only from solitary meditation, but from connecting deeply with others, sharing kindness, understanding their struggles, and lifting them. Let your heart be the source of your enlightenment. Embrace the journey, and you too shall find the light not just within yourself, but reflected in the lives you touch. In conclusion, the story serves as a reminder that our paths to self-improvement and wisdom may not always lead us along solitary trails. Sometimes, it is through the connections we forge, the kindness we extend, and the burdens we share that we truly find our way. Lift others, and in turn, you will be lifted. Embrace the joys of sharing, and you will discover that love and compassion are the greatest teachers on the journey toward enlightenment.